the tones are totally shifting. And here is Shelly Capito. She is the Republican senator from West Virginia. A lot of people made strong statements, and I put myself in the category of what the president's role was, particularly right after January 6th happened, right? So they're ushered into safe rooms, in quotation, in the Capitol building during the insurrection, and people said some pretty harsh statements about the causality involved in that insurrection. And she goes on to say, in the disappointment and shock. And I suppose as time goes on, the political considerations begin to weigh in. In other words, yes, on January 6th, late in the day, on January 7th, maybe even as late as January 8th, maybe 9th and 10th, we were thinking, oh, some of us were almost hung, literally hung. Some of us could have died. In fact, a Capitol policeman was killed. Others were killed in the course of trying to scale the walls of the Capitol building or rush in. There was nooses. There were zip tie handcuff restraints. There could have been other weapons. And we thought, maybe someone should have to be responsible for this. And then a whole couple of weeks go by. Almost 3 weeks go by.
Healing, if you will. A time for healing or forgetting.
Right. Or forgetting or realizing that, wait a second, what's really important is whether we get reelected. And the point being is that if it only takes 2 weeks from when your life has been threatened that inspired you to hold the former president of the United States accountable, if it only takes 2 weeks for you to get past your own personal safety, you're literally seconds away from potentially having seen the vice president of the United States led away for his own hanging. If you can get past that in 2 weeks so that you don't hold the president accountable or the former president accountable anymore, how far down the road do you think you're going to get with Joe Biden's calls for unity to pass something legislatively if their constituents, for whatever reason, don't want to do it, which of course they won't because it's Joe Biden, and a significant percentage of these people think that Joe Biden is going to, I don't know, whatever, change the flag of the United States into the Antifa flag. And I don't even know what, is there an Antifa? I don't think so.
Well, it's not an organization, so I don't think there's a flag. I mean, maybe these Republican senators just have great therapists. They got over it within 2 weeks.
That's very, very quick.
Yeah. I mean, the congressional health care plan, we all know, is quite generous. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with you. And they're terrified of the Trump primary voter. But I'll go out on the limb and say they might be a little overestimating Trump's power here. Like, now that he's been deplatformed, some of the air's been let out of the balloon here. He doesn't have a megaphone in the way he did before to just dictate things.
I think the real test to that, and I think without a doubt, he certainly, I mean, I think there is, we're all coming down, not we're all, but I think a significant portion of the country is coming down from like a sort of like a heightened state of anxiety and stress.
I've been feeling
on
that
some level, right?
Yeah,
like all the cortisol, is that what it is? Starts to bleed out. And wait, do we have a picture of the Antifa logo? Is that true? Well, pop that up. That could be the new flag that Joe Biden is going to be. There it is.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I spoke too soon.
There you go. And so I think, certainly the absence of him on social media has made him disappear from at least the forefront of our brains. And I imagine he is also laying low specifically right now to avoid providing the Republican senators any cover for doing this, for voting for him for impeachment.
Yeah.
My guess is going to be the day after the trial ends in the Senate, regardless of what they find, he is going to be back out there. And I mean, look, let's be honest. If he calls a press conference from Mar-a-Lago, the cameras are going to go down there. And now the networks may have learned their lesson, at least for a moment, and not necessarily covering it. But I think from a Republican lawmaker's perspective, if he's going to go and campaign against them, they have reason to be worried. I mean, because they have created a monster in their.
But now that he's out of power, I don't know if there's enough in it for him. I just don't know.
Oh, to do it.
That's
well, it would
saying.
have to be like on some type
and
of.
I don't think he has the megaphone that he's done, and has had in the past, and maybe I'm being short-sighted. That's entirely possible, but that's just like the vibe I'm getting. Me checking the temperature of the room right now.
Now, it turns out Patrick Leahy is going to preside over the impeachment hearings. He is the president pro tempore. How do you know how to pronounce that?
Tempore
of the Senate. And the Chief Justice of the United States does not have to do it. He's only obligated to essentially preside over the impeachment of a sitting president. Mm-hmm. And there is some talk amongst the Republicans that in the event that Donald Trump gets convicted, that they're going to try and take it to the Supreme Court to see if it's constitutional that a former president can be impeached. My understanding is it's always been more or less settled that that one could be, but of course they would try and reverse that, but only if he gets convicted. If he's not convicted, they'll save that for I don't know, maybe they'll try and impeach Bill Clinton or maybe FDR or something to that effect. If the Republicans have control of the
time to impeach Antifa
of the Senate. But one thing that we should note, they brought over one article of impeachment, and that was the inciting of this insurrection. And it'll be interesting to see how much of what has been revealed just in the past couple of days will be part of the argument that the House managers will make as to why Donald Trump should be prosecuted. There have been some amazing stories that have come out of Donald Trump's attempts. The most obvious attempts to change the outcome of the election were the 60-odd cases that they brought around the country that were all, I think, but one. And the one that they won was insignificant. Not just summarily dismissed by judges. In some instances, the cases went a little deeper into it, but more or less ended when the judge would turn to Rudy Giuliani or whoever was the litigator in any specific case and say, well, where is the existence of fraud here? Are you alleging fraud? And when the answer was invariably no, because there was none, these cases were dismissed. So that was one attempt that Donald Trump had in changing the outcome of the election. The final one we saw on January 6th, which was when the House and Senate was to certify the election. But those turned out to be bookends of a whole series of moves that the president engaged in to attempt to overthrow the election. There are at least 3 or 4 others off the top, that we can mention here. Right now, Politico reports that the Justice Department's internal watchdog announced yesterday that it has launched an investigation as to whether top officials at the department engaged in any impropriety in connection with challenges to the results of last year's presidential race. There was, reported by the Washington Post earlier this month, that the DOJ's Inspector General would examine the abrupt resignation of the U.S. Attorney in Atlanta, guy named B.J. Pack. And this was, we now know, and much of this was foiled, I think, because Raffensperger released the audio of his phone call with Donald Trump. And we know that Lindsey Graham pressured Raffensperger, who is the Secretary of State of Georgia, to find other places where maybe the votes could go the other way. We've listened to the conversation of Donald Trump going like, this is a good thing for you to do. I'm not telling you to do it, but you should.
30-minute rant at Raffensperger.
It was very mobby talky in that we're talking around stuff. We're talking to the side of it. Good things could happen for you. Bad things could happen for you if it doesn't happen. I'm not saying I would do it. I'm just saying it, there are reasons, et cetera, et cetera. And then we know that at least the DOJ's IG is investigating why the U.S. attorney from Atlanta, the federal attorney, the extension, essentially, the Department of Justice in Atlanta, why they resigned so abruptly and in such a weird time. And there is a belief, it's being investigated, that perhaps Donald Trump was pressuring this guy to find examples of voter fraud. People may remember back in 2004 and 5, Karl Rove led a systemic firing of U.S. attorneys who also would not find or prosecute people for voter fraud. There was a couple that resigned. There were a couple that were fired because they would not bring any cases. And then, in addition to these two calls by Graham and Trump to pressure Raffensperger, in addition to the abrupt resignation of the U.S. attorney in Atlanta, there was a report in the New York Times Friday, just a couple of days ago now, that Trump was trying to team up with the acting head of the Department of Justice's Civil Division, a guy named Jeffrey Clark, to have the department urge Republican Georgia legislatures to block the state's certification of Joe Biden's win there. And supposedly this plot included the requirement, perhaps, to pull it off, that they fire the then acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and replace him with this guy Clark from the Civil Division. And it wasn't until many of their aides, apparently, involved in the department, the DOJ, threatened to resign en masse, that it didn't happen. Although it's also possible, again, that the Raffensperger call short-circuited this attempt. I mean, so we have a relentless sort of campaign by Donald Trump to overturn the election results. Some people argue that this is, the system worked. But I don't think the system worked. I think there was a couple of people in there who did stuff. It is not part of the system that the Secretary of State leaks an audio call from the President of the United States leaning on him to change the election results. That just happens like by happenstance. It just so happens that Raffensperger was fed up at that point.
And we're lucky that he was concerned so much about his own legal culpability that he chose to record it. I mean, there were no checks and balances if Raffensperger didn't do this, because Georgia is from top to bottom, now in terms of the governorship and the powers that be there, controlled by Republicans. They were entirely susceptible to this kind of corruption. Even if Georgia had been overturned, obviously, Biden still would have won. But it just goes to show how paper thin these things are. And the fact that we just have these arbitrary state officials involved in certifying elections. I mean, in 2000, it was those 3 obscure Miami board members who were in charge of determining the recount. It's just so convoluted. It's so susceptible to corruption. And at the same time, we laud ourselves as the greatest democracy in the world.
All right. That trial is going to start in the Senate probably within 2 weeks. And so we will be keeping you updated on that. I imagine we're going to start to hear Republicans now sort of preening and posturing I don't even think they're going to pretend that they're going to listen to the evidence because they can't. Because, I mean, look, we know what the evidence is.
Yeah.
It all happened in broad daylight. And we know, I mean, there's not much to be revealed here, although I guess, these reports are going to be brought up. It really is just going to be, and impeachment is a political process. But in this instance, you're not even going to have the Republicans feign that they're going to listen to the case. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, got a couple of other stories to race through. A lot of stuff happening these days. We'll be right back after this.